All right, so I might be a little bit late on this one, but I want to talk about Tony Khan's tweets. Being somebody who himself, me, has had issues with Twitter in the past, with my communication with other people and my issues with how people behave on that platform, being anonymous and all, I may have a different take on it and it may surprise you. However, first of all, I want to say that it's unfortunate right now that Tony Khan is under a lot of fire because for the past 3 weeks, his television has been pretty good, I would say. Dynamite has improved a lot, so has Collision. To be honest, ever since the Punk thing happened, they've kind of slowly been able to regain their momentum. So obviously, CM Punk wasn't that necessary as far as them putting on a good TV show goes. However, the problem is that the damage may have been done because the viewership numbers are still declining and so are the ticket sales. It's pretty obvious that AEW is nowhere near as hot as it was in 2019 or in 2021. Those 2 years were probably their hottest time periods. I don't want to say 2020 because that was nobody was hot because of the world pandemic problem, but everybody being, at home and they had to tape their shows ahead of time with empty arenas. I hate 2020. It's just bad. But 2021 gave a bit of a boost for wrestling. I think the pandemic and being away from live shows helped in a way because people appreciated it more, at least for now. However, back to the topic at hand. I understand Tony Khan is frustrated with losing the Tuesday Night War. NXT did a better number than them. First of all, he's proud of having a good AEW Dynamite on Tuesday, and I agree with that. I actually think that Dynamite was better than NXT. It was a different goal to put the show together versus NXT, but I felt that Dynamite had the better matches and the better angles, even though the segment with MJF was very controversial because of what's going on, in the Middle East, right now in Palestine. It's still the angle itself and the back and forth between the Bullet Club Gold and MJF was it was well done. It was very well executed, and apparently that was MJF's idea. It's just the timing, I think, was not the best. But back to Tony Khan. So, him being frustrated at the number is understandable, but a lot of people in AEW and actually all over the wrestling world are talking about this and telling him he needs to put his phone down. Tony is a very emotional guy. He comes off very unhinged. He comes off very unstable. He comes off like he wants to be everybody's friend and he wants to be beloved, but he can't understand the difference between business and friendship. He probably legitimately thought that CM Punk was his quote unquote friend when he worked with him, not realizing that that wasn't the case and that business and friendship don't always mix. I had to learn that the hard way too. See, I can kind of relate with Tony Khan, right? And there were times where I've been very unhinged. And it's very difficult to deal with Twitter sometimes because you've got people coming after your neck a lot. And that's something else I understand. That this happens, guys. And when you try to be a good person and when you try to just put your best foot forward and try to make people happy and entertain them, and people are constantly coming after you, you can sometimes take it personal because you're doing your best. You got people trying to undermine you to get themselves over. It's just that's how Twitter works. I do think that, however, there are some things that I think went a little bit too far with Tony Khan when it comes to Twitter, and I'm going to discuss why in a minute. I do think at this point Tony Khan needs to no longer be on television anymore, and he needs to stop because whenever he's on television or on Twitter, he comes off awkward, he comes off weird, he comes off like he doesn't have any social skills. I've had friends of mine who have told me they think he has Asperger's or some kind of autism, which is certainly possible. He gives off this energy of being like a silver spoon baby. And he kind of is. I mean, his dad was the man who came here from the Middle East and became a super wealthy billionaire. Tony Khan is reaping what his dad sowed. Now, again, understand when I say that, I'm not necessarily saying that his dad should have, not given him any money. I understand that. But he's very, very lucky and very blessed. And he should view that life as being a lucky and blessed life. Not a lot of people, including the majority of his audience, can live the life that he lives because of the money he has. And trust me, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of wrestling fans out there who, if they had that money, they would start a company. Tony Khan just happened to be the right sperm cell in the right guy to have that money to start a wrestling company, right? But I think the mistake that he made, and this goes back to me studying wrestling, is when he took shots at The Undertaker and John Cena. I think calling Triple H and Shawn Michaels like bald assholes or whatever that he did, going after their physical appearance was kind of a low blow and very unprofessional and just very. It just made him seem like a little child who's whining and bitching, which he does, right? And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, if you're maybe listening to this and you're not sure, check out some other videos on YouTube or go to his Twitter at Tony Khan and read the stuff he's been saying lately. And so prior to NXT even starting, he took a shot at Triple H and Shawn Michaels' appearance, which they can make fun of your appearance too, bro. It's just not something that you want to do. Tony should have saved face and not gone that far. He could have privately said that, but not publicly. Publicly, the right angle would be, we did our best. I think we had a better show, but kudos to NXT for winning the night. That's it. That's it. AEW beat NXT a couple of years ago when they were competing head to head on many weeks, most weeks, in fact. So he has nothing to be ashamed of, but the reality is that AEW is slowly beginning to lose momentum, even though I think they're gaining momentum for the kind of wrestling I like. Their tickets are not showing that yet. Their ratings are just there. You know, but when he went so far as to say that a streak has been broken, a show with The Undertaker and John Cena for the first time didn't do over 1 million. First of all, that's objectively wrong. He claims to be a wrestling fanatic, and everybody says how smart he is, but he forgot that John Cena had wrestled on Velocity, and those shows didn't do 1 million. A lot of these guys also worked the independents or the territories way back in the day. Those shows didn't do 1 million. But even for WWE, Cena did wrestle on Velocity. But here's the problem is, him bringing up The Undertaker and John Cena, I think, was the biggest mistake he could have made. Because number one, you're being very disrespectful to those two talents. And if someday you want to work with them, I'm not saying it's going to happen because I don't think either one of those guys is ever going to work with Tony Khan, even before he made these comments. Now, for sure, you're going to kill that. Number two, you had Edge, Adam Copeland, who not only is fresh off of WWE TV just a month ago or a couple months ago, but a guy who has also never wrestled in front of people with that low of a number. Edge has not wrestled in front of an audience as small as the one he did on AEW Dynamite on Tuesday. So you're making fun of or bringing up the fact that Taker and Cena don't draw, but your guy that you just got from WWE, who WWE made a star, didn't draw for you either. And that show also had Bryan Danielson, Chris Jericho, and other talents that were on WWE TV. Paige, Saraya. So you can't even sit there and say that. The problem is, it's one thing to be disrespectful toward the other company. Eric Bischoff did that back in the day. WWF did it back to WCW, but it was the corporation they were going after. If you want to sit there and cut promos on Nick Khan, on Triple H, on Vince McMahon, which he did do, on Endeavor, you can do that if you want to. It's still not a good practice, but that's fine. But when you start attacking a wrestler, you're supposed to be a man who loves the business. And before he got into the business, he was a fan. First of all, The Undertaker and John Cena have a lot of clout and a lot of respect. Your top guy, Edge, had two major feuds with both those guys. In one instance with John Cena in 2006, Edge became a main event player at the fact that John Cena put him over with the Money in the Bank cash-in. And John Cena and Edge had a great feud in 2006, and some say it was their best. That was their best opponent, each other, right? So Edge is on your show, and you're straight up taking shots at John Cena, who's probably still close to Edge to a degree. For all we know, they may have talked about this, and I'm going to get to why I'm saying that in a minute. Then you've got The Undertaker, who main evented WrestleMania 24. I was in the building for that show. Undertaker versus Edge for the World Heavyweight title. And Edge and Taker had a tremendous feud in 2008 with some great matches. The ladder match, the Hell in a Cell match. You know, Edge has a tremendous amount of respect for The Undertaker, and so does everybody in the wrestling business, especially other wrestlers. There are people in AEW who have never been to WWE who respect The Undertaker because of what he's accomplished. Guys like Christopher Daniels. You know, guys like, there's so many that I can think of. Even guys like, you know, Luchasaurus was in developmental, so I don't know if I count him, but you know, even Kenny Omega respects The Undertaker, and Kenny Omega also respects Shawn Michaels. So you saying that is almost like you're spitting in the face of wrestlers that guys on your roster respect. Dude, you can't say anything bad about The Undertaker, man. You just can't. Like, unless he does something truly criminal, this man is beloved by the business of wrestling, the corporation, the people that work in the business, the wrestlers, and the fans. You made yourself a heel by going down that road, my friend. And really, the issue, too, is the fact that the minute you start attacking wrestlers, even if they don't work under your company, one thing that's been an issue in wrestling for decades is this has been a major combative situation in wrestling is the office versus the boys, the company versus the wrestlers. And sometimes the wrestlers will band together to take control of their own careers against the company. You know, this you never want to screw over one of the boys. You never do. So the wrestlers are very sensitive to that kind of thing. So if you're going to sit there and talk about Cena and Taker, what if they say to themselves, well, shit, if I leave this company, what if he bashes me? So there's all kinds of problems with saying that. Bottom line is the wrestlers, like the actual in-ring wrestlers, have a code of ethics and they have a code of respect that somebody like Tony Khan, who's never been in a wrestling ring, could never understand. He just can't understand that. And the problem is that people in wrestling know that. They know he comes off like a weasel. So when you say things like that, it makes you look weaselly. I've been saying for a long time that the best thing for Tony to do is run the company privately behind the scenes, hire an authority figure. And I'm not saying I want it to be like the general managers, you know, of WWE, but I mean hire somebody to kind of be his, you know, his speaker, book matches and announce, you know, make announcements without it being Tony Khan as a big announcement. He really does enjoy getting his ego stroked. He does enjoy doing media scrums and having people pamper his ass. And I know that for a fact because I have a friend of a friend who used to go to the AEW media scrums and at one point criticized the company years ago and they haven't been allowed back since. That's not a coincidence, man. A lot of the guys that do the wrestling media for AEW, they really are ass kissers. I'm just keeping it real. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. Tony Khan is a very insecure guy. And I think it's because he was always raised as being this, you know, kind of pampered and probably never dealt with confrontation that much. I get it. He doesn't even like firing people. He'd rather just let their contract run out, which is kind of passive aggressive. And again, that's what happens when you come from money. You get people like that. Now, I'm not saying he's not a nice guy. I am not saying that because for all intents and purposes, I think he's a nice guy and I think he truly does love wrestling. But when you bring up The Undertaker and John Cena, and even if you're not even insulting them that bad, but saying they couldn't draw a million, you haven't drawn a million in a long time, Tony Khan. Like, that's just, you know, unopposed, by the way. And it's just, it was a low blow, and it was one that backfired on him. Just never attack the talent. Take responsibility and say, okay, well, we didn't book the show that we thought would work. We got to improve our booking because the matches are not in the control of Tony Khan. He's not the guy who puts matches together, but the storylines are. And obviously, whatever NXT's been doing for the past year under Shawn Michaels has worked. It's worked, yo. You can't deny it. So I feel like that was his biggest mistake. He really does need to get off of Twitter. Either hire somebody to tweet for you, like what Vince McMahon used to do, where you have somebody else manage the account, or have somebody else write up the tweets and then you tweet it yourself. That is the most helpful thing to do. And so he's just, the thing about Tony Khan is, I know he's not a bad person, but anytime he's in the public eye, he just makes himself look more and more silly, and I lose more and more respect for him. And to me, it's just like, it didn't have to be that way. The first time I ever saw Tony Khan live, I went to All Out 2019. He came out dressed in a suit, right, and well, with a shirt and tie. Very well groomed, didn't have the wild beard or the wild hair, you know. And he basically came out and thanked the fans and said they're going to make All Out a Chicago tradition, which is true. Very likable guy at first, but every time he speaks, starting with the 2021 exploding ring match that flopped, that was the first time I saw cracks when he was defending it. When he should have just said, you know what, it wasn't that great. We messed up. We're going to do better next time. And again, I understand where he's coming from because I sometimes will defend the stuff that I do. You have a right to defend yourself, but when you start crossing into attacking Cena and Taker, who have never said anything bad about Tony Khan, it's one thing if they struck him first. He just picked them out saying, hey, they didn't do a million. Dude, you lost. It doesn't matter if they did a million or not. You lost. And they were also not wrestling. They were just there in corners and making appearances. Taker wasn't even entirely advertised, just teased. It wasn't like that. If they did like John Cena versus The Undertaker on NXT, they would have probably done over a million, right? Easily, right? That's not what happened here. So, and I noticed that on the feedback on Twitter, people were telling him, dude, just focus on your product, which is what he needs to do. Eric Bischoff said, shut up and wrestle. People have said, dude, you need to focus on your product. Get the product better, hire better writers, hire somebody else to book, learn from guys like Edge and Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, Adam Copeland. Learn from these guys as much as you can because they've got a lot of talent and they could be doing better than they are, and it's sad that they're not. And I think maybe TK's feeling the effects of that. I get the pressure. I've been there at the pressure cooker doing that, being in competition with other businesses like I've been with Geekdom 101. It happens. I'm not even mad about it. It's just life. You got into the wrestling business. You're not working for WWE, so you're going to have them come after you. It happens. These things happen. They've always happened. WWE wants to own the space. Is that fair? I mean, that's on you, but they are the big cheese no matter what. Just focus on being a good alternative. That's what I have to say. Anyways, y'all, I'm out. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you thought down below, and I'll see you very soon.